Welcome back, everyone, to Seaweed Brain, a Percy Jackson podcast in our Sea of Monsters era. You have found us having yet another fantastic, wonderful, exciting conversation with a Percy Jackson Season 2 head of department. You don't want to miss this. We're talking with Cate Adair, the costume designer of Percy Jackson and the Olympians, so stick around. Welcome, Cate. We are so happy to have you on the podcast for the first time ever.
I know. I'm very excited. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm Erica, joined as always by Carter this morning. Hi, Carter.
Hello.
Good morning, Carter.
Hello. Cate, we got to meet you during our set visit, which was so wonderful. You were so generous with your time in showing us all around your department and getting to show us the intricacies of so many different costumes and also like your workspace itself. I mean, in addition to like the like kind of like storage area for all of the costumes, we got to see like where the sausage gets made and like actual like sewing machines and chemicals and paints and things that I don't even know the name of, and fabric scraps and inspiration and concept art. So we are so excited to talk to you all about like the process of inspiration behind certain pieces this season and character design. But before we get into all of that, since it's your first time on our podcast, we want to hear all about like your career and what got you into costume designing in the first place. Like as a kid, when did you have that moment where you were like, oh, this is what I want to do? Or even like realizing that this was a job that you could even have?
That's a great question. And it's one I get asked a lot. And I should start by saying that there's so many different ways people get into costuming and costume design. So as I tell this story, I don't want any of the people who watch your podcast to think that there's only one road. I'm one of those obnoxious people who always wanted to do this. When I was a small child, I made things and I cut my mom's curtains up and her clothes up, and we lived in the middle of the country and we didn't have a TV, and my godmother was a children's dress designer and she used to take me up to London and I would go to the fabric stores with her and I would go to the lace shops with her. And I remember an old button and trim shop with all these little tiny drawers and one of those old-fashioned ladders. It looked like something out of Harry Potter. So from a very, very, very young age, I was always making things and creating things. And I had a great aunt who was a puppet maker, and she had all these puppets up in her loft.
Wow.
And I used to go and visit her for tea, and I'd climb up the stairs and there were all these wicker baskets. I mean, how lucky am I? And there were all these puppets. And she taught puppetry. And was also a calligrapher. And I remember going to her house one day, and there was a potato sitting on the sill above the sink in the kitchen. And I was like, Aunt Lucy, what's that for? And she said, oh, this potato is going to be the head of a poet. And I was like, really? And sure enough, the next time I came to visit her, she had taken a cast of the potato, and it was now a puppet's head, and he was a poet, and he had this little tiny piece of hair at the back here that she had made out of lamb's wool that she'd found on a fence. I mean, I was incredibly blessed to have these very eccentric, wonderful, batty aunts and uncles and family members. And so wanting to do something like costume design was not outside of the box, I guess. And then when I was about 5.5, my mom took me up to London from the country, and we saw Peter Pan. And it was just before Christmas. And we went into one of those little Victorian jewel box theatres on the West End of London. And I remember going in, and it was really cold outside, and you went inside and everything was this sort of beautiful, sort of deep red velvet and all the gilded paint, and there was the proscenium arch, and the lights went down and it was all warm, and everything got really, 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 really quiet. And then the curtains opened and there was this whole world. And I was like, yeah, that's me. I don't want to be in front of the camera. I want to be behind. I want to help create these worlds. So I finished high school. I started advanced degrees at high school level, which you can do in England. And then I realized I had the academics I needed to go straight to art school. So I went to art school, I did 2 years of general art, and then I specialized in set and costume design. And then my parents decided to move to America, where I knew nobody.
Wow.
And everybody said, you need to go to graduate school, you need to make contacts. And my parents were like, you already have the degree. And it was a terminal degree. It's fashioned very differently in England. So they were like, why are we going to spend money to teach you stuff you already know? So I went into fashion merchandising for about 2 years, hated it, learned a lot, did not see myself in little tidy suits and 5-inch heels. And so at that point, they were living down south. My father had retired from the military and they'd emigrated to the States. So I moved to Washington, D.C., and I saw that they were looking for a seamstress at the Folger Shakespeare Library. And so I know, random, right?
That's a cool job.
And I took a cut sample of my sewing, because I'd been sewing my whole life, into the costume shop. And I said, I think I know how to sew. And she hired me on the spot. So for my first years, I actually worked in theater and opera and ballet. And I did hand sewing, and I did pattern cutting, and I did aging and dyeing fabrics. And then I started to research for one of the designers. And I would deliberately go into places like the Washington Opera when they would bring these gorgeous costumes in from Europe, whole sets. And because I was a good hand stitcher and quick, they would give me the hand sewing to do on the principal costumes. So I got to see these really world-class costume designers work up close and personal. The fabric choices they made, the trim choices they made, how they were built, how they were constructed. And then slowly I started designing smaller regional theater. From there, I ended up doing a Shakespearean touring company for 10 years and working for the children's program at the then Kennedy Center,
Right.
for the performing arts. And then films and television would come into Washington, D.C., and they would need extra help. And my name would come up. And from there, a friend of mine was going to do a film in Europe, in France, and she remembered that I was bilingual. And she asked me to assist her. And then the whole project moved to Rome. Best job of my life. Fantastic job. I was the assistant designer, so I wasn't in the hot seat. I learned a huge amount. I got to be in Rome. Who doesn't love that?
This is a movie, you said?
Yes, it was a movie years and years and years ago. And when it finished, she said, you should try moving to LA. So from there, I transitioned into film and television all the time. That was probably way more than you wanted to know. But,
No,
No.
this is everything to me. Like Carter and I, we love hearing everybody's stories. And that was so interesting. I was wondering if you came from a theater background.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you mentioned that to us when we first met, but I feel like so much of, especially doing theater and where your background came from, like doing like a lot of Shakespeare stuff, so much of costume designing is like being a historian.
Yes.
Or like it's so similar to like working in a museum and having to understand how to like repair and what is the word I'm thinking of? Restore. Like so much of your job, I feel like, is restoration and like historical knowledge in addition to the creativity and the designing and also in some ways it's like engineering.
I mean, I have friends who really love contemporary fashion. So all they want to do, and this is no dish on them, is they're really good at it. And so doing contemporary design all the time is their passion. And then I have friends who are completely locked into the sci-fi world and superhero suits. And so we all have our own journeys and our own interests. I think starting in theater, and I do say this to students, for me, I learned so much from my actors. And the difference between theater and film and television is that I was able to watch actors go through their process. I was able to sit and watch them rehearse. I was able to sit and learn from them the difference that a different kind of shoe made, or if I put them in a different kind of jacket, how it made them feel or move. Cut to film and television, where somebody comes through the door, often just a day or a couple of days before they are on camera. And it's sort of, hello, nice to meet you. Please take your clothes off and try these clothes on. But the training my actors gave me when I had more time, I think has given me, I hope has given me a very different perspective on what I ask of them and what they ask of me. And when they say, I'm not sure about this, because they are not yet comfortable in the space of the new character they're building overnight. And when it's a legitimate, wool makes me itchy. And if wool makes me itchy, I'm not going to be able to perform. So I think those years in the trenches with a lot more time and often less money were a great gift, certainly for the way I approach what I do.
Yeah, since you don't have sort of in TV film, you don't have that time to sort of like watch the actor find the character. Do you feel like you are spending more time kind of finding the character, thinking about the character?
It's a mixture. What I'll often do, for instance, with Cersei, we had such a wide range of different actors that they were looking at and talking about. I mean, hugely different, all really talented, but very different proportions, very different physicalities. So I actually had initially, I think, 5 or 6 completely different ways to go, even though I knew the set, depending on who they would cast. And then once I knew it was Rosemary, I literally went and pulled up footage of her in other roles just to double check how she moved, how she moves her hands. Because even though she's brilliant at becoming different people, there were certain signature pieces to her that I noticed. So that when we met each other and I showed her the sketch, and then we adapted it just slightly based on, because that costume actually got built over the holiday break. She filmed that in January during the fires. That was fun for both of us. But I had the costume built in Los Angeles during the break. So we had a tiny bit more time to mess with it, just a little bit. And as soon as she saw it, she was like, can I have the bottom of the sleeve a little bit fuller? And I really love the pants. Can we make sure that when I stand, it looks like a skirt, which I had already decided. So there were little things like that were cool. It varies. Some actors come in and say, tell me who I am. I just got off a plane and I just finished X, Y, and Z. And they've literally gone from one character to another almost overnight. And other actors send me mood boards and say, I've had all these ideas. And you're like, okay, here we go. And I think each person, just the same way with each of our friends, we use a slightly different language of communication. Some friends you haven't seen for a week and you sit down over coffee and you go, how are you? And other friends you haven't seen for 3 months or 6 months. And they're just like, oh my God, let me tell you blah, 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 right? It's exactly the same thing with actors.
Yeah.
And then there were actors that I've already worked with who came barreling through the door. And that was like, like one of my Grey sisters, who, of course, I did Mysterious Benedict Society with.
Segue.
How'd I do?
Segue. I love when we do interviews and our guests segue for us. It's so nice. I am the biggest Mysterious Benedict Society fan. Carter and I read those books growing up, like alongside reading Percy Jackson. I have them all on my childhood bookshelf. And when Disney announced that adaptation, I was so stinking excited for it. And I absolutely loved watching it on Disney Plus. I am like always championing that show. And it was so exciting to see, similar to watching Percy Jackson, it was so exciting to see that world come to life visually that I had been imagining. And the design if anybody hasn't seen Mysterious Benedict Society on Disney Plus, which you should, the design is so unique and it is so catching, and it is such a huge part of the show, is this like very like pastel, almost Wes Anderson, like out of time but of a time style that comes everything from like the sets to the costumes and even to the style of the acting. It's super quirky and it's super fun. And for people who don't know, James Bobin, who also executive produced and is like the head director of Percy Jackson, also made Mysterious Benedict Society. And Cate was a costume designer for Mysterious Benedict Society. So tell us about like getting involved in that show, and then what that whole creative conversation was like to create that like so beautiful, unique world.
Well, I should say I would go anywhere in the world with James. I absolutely adore working with him. He is clear. Maybe, I mean, it's not always the case, but perhaps because we're both English, and he has this lovely sense of humor, and he's very accessible, and he's open to ideas, but he's very clear when it doesn't make sense to him, without being brusque or aggressive, which is a real talent when you're juggling that much. And he's also extraordinary with actors of any age, because he talks to everybody. He doesn't talk down to anybody. He doesn't simplify his language. He's so clear in his communication that you can catch it, whether you're 3 or 4 years old or you're, or you're 108. I was very lucky with Mysterious Benedict Society. 2 of the 4 showrunners knew me by association. So when I came through the door, they already put me at ease, because they were like, oh my gosh, we've talked to X, Y, and Z. We're really excited to meet you. We know your work. So that was really lovely. And then I just happened to have, my son knew the books as well. And so I pulled them off the shelf, and I just happened to feel that sort of out of time, out of place, accessibility and slight quirk made sense. And so I had pulled a number of 60s and early 70s images, because I just loved the whimsy of them in a way that made sense to me. And I felt passionately that, and I think that's true with both shows, I felt passionately that wherever a young person is in their life and wherever they live, and this is something I said on both interviews and I felt very strongly about, perhaps also because I have my own child and he has a lot of friends, I didn't want anyone who watched it to feel alienated. I didn't want any child or any young person, having traveled as much as I have and having had the privilege of knowing as many different people as I have from different cultural and economic backgrounds, I felt passionately, and I still do, that for anyone who loves those books, they shouldn't feel that they couldn't belong. I think that's really important, especially with these kinds of stories. You want somebody to feel inspired regardless of their age. You want to feel like they could be that. And the fact that none of the young people in Mysterious Benedict, none of them have superpowers, right?
Just the superpower of being really good at standardized tests.
Well, only one of them. Think about it. You've got one who's really good at standardized tests, but he doesn't always have a lot of common sense. You have one who has extraordinary empathy and common sense and is very smart, but is also rather naive sometimes.
Yeah.
You have somebody who's almost on the spectrum in terms of their ability to never shut up, but they also have a capacity to see and feel things that most people don't, right? And then you have somebody who's absolutely shit at tasting tests, but can fix anything.
I love Cate so much. Cate, the great Cate Weatherall, that is my girl. I love her.
She's
I loved her
fabulous.
beanie. I
I
loved
loved
her
her
beanie.
beanie. I loved her sneakers. So when I got to Vancouver, I had to be in quarantine for 2 weeks because it was during COVID and before the inoculations. I thought we were crazy. I thought we were never going to do this show. They put me on a plane. I got to Vancouver. There was nobody there. It looked like, it was after some apocalypse. And everything was shut. And I got down to passport and they said, "Why are you here? Are you a first responder?" I was like, "No." And they're like, "Are you a nurse?" And I'm like, "No." And they're like, "What are you?" And I'm like, "I'm a costume designer." They're like, "Why are you here?" So anyway, long story short, I was in quarantine for 2 weeks. We all were. And so I took out my coloring crayons and my markers, and I had a pair of shoes that were her size because I'd done one set of fittings before we shut down, because I started to prep it and then we shut down. And then COVID happened, and then I got this random phone call saying, "Get on a plane in 24 hours." So I drew on the sneakers myself, and then my poor team had to copy them like 8 times. It was hilarious. Anyway, I was just lucky because we were all on the same page. And the production designer, Michael, he and I sort of springboarded off of each other. We just did. And so once we decided on plaids, and once we had decided on a color palette, and I put together a color board, much the same way that you saw a color board on, it's something I always do, because I think you saw my office and you saw the color board for Percy as well. So, and then it became a competition about how many plaids I could throw in, how many plaids he could throw in, where we changed the plaids. It was, we had a bit of a plaid rivalry going on. It was pretty fun. So the orphanage is very full of plaid. And every single one of those plaids is different, and every single one of them is a slightly different color, just so you know.
That's perfect it's just so perfect for the world of the books and for the story, and how everybody is this weird, unique talent and mixture of weird, unique gifts and weird, unique weaknesses. And it's a very similar, I'm just pitching the Mysterious Benedict Society for our listeners, but if you didn't grow up reading them, like, it's a very similar, it has the same heart as
it does.
Percy Jackson.
Mm-hmm. It absolutely does. And I think especially in the world we're living in today, I think anything that can empower and inspire people and young people is really important. I think it's very, very, very important in a world full of TikTok and Instagram and people either just posting their most special moments to acknowledge a world that is up and down, that does have challenge, that you can overcome, that isn't just starkly one thing or the other, but is just life and communication and friendship and support. And I think both those shows do that in 2 very different ways. Then I'm all about it. I really am.
Yeah. So moving forward from Mysterious Benedict Society to Percy Jackson,
yes,
I guess the first situating question that we might ask is about the fact that in this show, you were coming in on season 2. There was some costuming language and a whole season of the show, I guess, to already reference. What was that like? I guess slotting into that, finding things to build and change and adjust based on the fact that it's season 2 and based on your own ideas and preferences.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And of course, conversely, my friend Chrissy Carbonitas did season 2 of Mysterious Benedict because I wasn't available for it. I was on HBO's Perry Mason season 2. And so there was nowhere. They were like, "Can you do both?" And I was like, "No, guys, that's not fair on you, and it's just not possible." So in the reverse, Tisha just decided to retire. Again, we know each other, and we know each other not well, but by association. I think there are two things, and she set a very, very nice, a very lovely base for me to build on. I think the two principal pieces are that my actors were nearly 2 years older. So,
yes.
And season 1 was a road trip through our world from East Coast to West Coast. And also that all of the specialty creatures in season 1 were all CGI. Every single one of them. Except for the tea house. It was all CGI. In season 2, they're almost never in the real world. I mean, the closest you could argue is Camp Half-Blood, and there's a little piece in when they're on the docks with the boat. But other than that, you're in this mythical world, which you weren't in season 1. Yes. And in season 2, as you know, I got to design, and we actually filmed for real all of the creatures. So the palette and the juxtaposition of the children being old, the young people being older, so proportionally and visually the clothes needed to say that, I felt. You didn't want them to look as young, but you also didn't want them to look as though they were pretending to be in college. So there was that. And there was also the freedom that I had because Tish didn't have undead sailors on an ironclad ship. She didn't have 8-foot giants tromping around the woods. So there was already leeway, still respecting the vehicle and the world that had been created. There was still leeway for me to build on what she had done, be respectful of that, but if you like, carve my own journey and carve my own path. And hopefully I did that. And then where the chariot races are concerned, once I saw the concept art for the, I was lucky here. Once I saw the concept art for the chariots and I saw the scale of the chariot arena, did they take you there? Did you actually get to see that?
Yes, we saw the
it's
set.
Huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. And I came back and I sat down with James Bobbin, with James and Dan and Zoe, and I said, guys, first of all, most importantly, all of the armor for season 1 does not fit anybody. It's too small. Oops. So I have to design it.
It's like investing in baby clothes. Like, yes. you know they're going to grow out of it. So let's know that we're going to have to replace this in a year.
And I said, and it's a special event. So surely, even if Clarice was using the old armor for the Border Patrol, if they're bringing these chariots that used to be used out of storage, they would be bringing the armor out. And they kind of looked at me and rolled their eyes and realized I was right. And that began a huge journey of me doing thumbnail sketches and then getting them fine-tuned by my illustrator and then working with a specialty costume making house in Vancouver. And they molded it all first in clay. Wow. And then I would go and visit about twice a week and say, no, excuse me, I would say, no, I want Percy's horse to be doing this, not this. And no, Athena needs more this. And then one of the sculptures is actually the one who came up with the little tiny olives in amongst the olive branches in her in her helmet. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, you're right. And then the owl originally, I said, I don't want it to be, I said it needs to look classic, but not boring. So we spent quite a lot of time on figuring out the expression on the owl and how big the beak was and all sorts of silly bits and pieces. And then I realized that because the chariots were different colors, the armor should be different colors. Subtly. I mean, I didn't want it to be red and green and purple, but yes, just, and I think you saw the sample where we played with all the different colors, and then I took it out to the DP and he tested it in different lights, and then we adjusted it slightly.
Yeah. In addition to that, like that coloring of the armor, I'm so interested in the colors for the cabins, because we got to see the amazing handkerchiefs that you designed and all the different colors, and that was something that was sort of present for season 1 in the sense of like there was a lot of like set deck and like kind of like art department stuff with all of the colors and the pieces of fabric tied on that bridge, and also like I guess the flags for the cabins, but that really like comes to the forefront and was like further developed for season 2. So how did you guys who made the decision on what color aligns with what cabin, and was there a lot of arguing on like why Athena should be yellow?
No, a lot of that was decided by the art department and the set decorating department. You are correct, in season 1. And then the colors were tweaked a little bit for the arena and for the chariot race. I was lucky because sometimes they dump the costume department in the bowels, sort of way separate, which is super annoying. We're like, no,
why is the costume department always in the basement? Why is it always in the basement, down 8 flights of stairs?
Stairs, no light. I'm like,
they have to do laundry. Like, what's up with that?
Thank you. So I was lucky because my office, as you know, was right next to Hamish, who is the head of the set decorating department. And he had done season 1 as well. And then the art department was a carryover from season 1 as well. They could not. And so with props, I was really the only new kid on the block. So all of them could not have been more welcoming, more helpful, more inclusive if my life had depended upon it. So literally, I would walk from my office in next door to Hamish with my mug of tea and my biscuits and go, talk to me about the colors of the banners, talk to me about the color of the houses. What was the template from season 1? How are you or the art department changing it slightly for season 2? And that's where the colors for the bandanas came from. And
did your department make the paper hats in the shape of chariots that we had the extras wearing?
I know, I love those. I love those. No, that was my wonderful props department. That was my wonderful.
Okay.
And again, with the armor, the props department, we made sure that the props that were being made were made at the same facility that the armor was made at. So that, again, the fabrication, where it looked like it was hammered, the coloring, all of that was connected. Yeah.
We should hopefully be speaking with Dean and Michelle soon. Fingers crossed. We're working on finding a good time to schedule.
Tell them I miss them horribly.
We will. We'll say Cate sends her love, and she loves your paper hats.
Yes, and everything else. And the clamshell. Michelle designed the clamshell that Cersei has, and she did 2 different sizes. And then when we looked at it all together based on our actress's frame, it was just so much of a statement when you came into close-up behind the desk. And so collectively, we came up with it being hooked to her belt. Yeah, which I think is much more interesting because you know it's there, but you don't really know why it's there until she lifts it up, and then you're like, oh, okay.
She's magic powder. Yes, that's very witchy to have your magic. You have to have like a little sash, full of your stuff.
Or a pocket. And they were like, can we have a pocket? I was like, no, you can't have a pocket.
Putting something in it. I can imagine that putting stuff in pockets as like a costume designer is an absolute nightmare. You're like, you can't put that in your pocket and be on. It's going to look like it's going to look terrible on camera if you have something bulging in your pocket in the pants I made you.
Yeah. We sometimes stitch them up. We're sometimes really awful, and we just so they can't
Don't
get
you
their
dare.
hands in them. They can't hide anything in them. So anyway,
another big color aspect of season 2 that a lot of people like online, a lot of fandom spaces have picked up on is the Percabeth colors. That like Percy and Annabeth are in the same color scheme that they were in season 1. Even when they go through their makeovers at Cece's, Percy still has that blue sash, and Annabeth has her like pink eyeshadow. Will you tell us about the Percabeth colors? And if you knew that that was something that you wanted to like keep as you inherited from season 1?
It was definitely something that that Dan and my showrunners talked about. Was that there was a through line, and Annabeth's jacket was made from scratch. It's not a purchase piece. I found 3 or 4 jackets that I liked. A couple of them were vintagey, and then proportioning it down to Leah's scale, because as you know, she's very petite and very tiny. And we tried a number of different colors and color tested them to get that color. And you know that with video, some of that's going to get messed with afterwards, which is sometimes a bit of a challenge, I won't lie, because you don't know what they're going to do with it in the color mix. So I wanted it to not be quite as, I think it's a little warmer. I wanted it to be a little warmer in season 2 than it was in season 1. And also with the way they film with her skin tone, there's something lovely when you put something a little warmer. That's why she looks gorgeous in pinks, and things that have a warm undertone to them really do gorgeous things to Leah's complexion. And then with Percy's jacket, I found a jacket I liked, but I didn't like the color. But again, we went through doing a number of different dye samples, because we knew it was going through so many different pieces of the puzzle. You know, the color on and what did it look like when it was wet, because as you know, a lot of them get wet. They get wet. So we also looked at what different fabrics did, how much they changed when they got wet.
Was that a major consideration across the board for all of the characters? We have to look at it wet, we have to look at it dry, we have to look at it windswept.
Absolutely true. And where they were situated, and with my 2 cinematographers, how that helped them or didn't. The same with how much aging and distressing there was on the wedding dress, and how it looked like it had, because most of that you see in the dark, but I didn't want it to look like a bad paint job. Again, I think my breakdown team did an amazing job on that dress. And I've been watching it at home on television with my family, and even on a small screen, I'm like, thank you guys so much, because they really, I wanted it to look as though sort of the moisture had seeped up it from it being in the trunk in the cave. And they really, kudos to them, that they really did a lovely job. But it was the same thing with Clarice's leather jacket, which is also a custom made piece. And it was partly the leather we chose, and then how we broke it down, how we conditioned it, the oils and stuff that we put into it. Because again, I didn't want it, I wanted you to believe it was wet. And yes, indeed, she was wet. She was very wet. And they did all have very thin wetsuits on underneath. But kudos to that. Kudos to my Dior. Kudos to all of them. But Dior running, I mean, I was there when they were filming that. And she really did do all of that. She really ran into that water. She really ran onto that deck. We have an amazing stunt team, but the amount of it that the young actors completely safely do themselves is breathtaking to me, and a testament to how well they're trained and how well they're looked after. Yeah.
For people, for our listeners, like to understand kind of the scope of what you do, how many of each of these pieces do you have? Like how many of Clarice's leather jackets are on hand versus, Percy's seafoam green and Annabeth's custom made? Like how many of those are around at all times and being washed and, repaired and turned oily so they look wet?
It varied from one character to another, obviously. So I tried to look at with my team sort of the trajectory of what we think it's going to go through. In each case, there's backup fabric. In the case of Clarice's jacket, there are two places, just because of the scale, where there is a stunt person of a smaller scale. So we had to build a smaller jacket and a smaller pair of pants. I think Percy's seafoam green jacket, I think there were about 12.
Oh, wow.
I think 10 or 12. And Annabeth is something similar. Because even if they survive, if they're going from wet one day to wet the next day, you don't want to, sometimes it's better to let something dry naturally, to rinse it gently and then let it dry naturally, because the more you tumble things, the more you break down the fabric, which we all know from our jeans and our t-shirts at home. So in some cases, even though we only needed one, we would use two in rotation so they had time to dry without being more aggressive with them than we had to be. So it varied from one piece to another. Tantalus, there's only one costume. I think in the end we did manage to build two, but he came in very, very late. That costume was made in 48 hours.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
It was terrifying.
It looks great.
Thank you. And he was super fun. So, you take a leap of faith. You sometimes have a little bit more hidden in the back. But the budgets are always also the budgets. I think my biggest regret for your listeners is it's not that I didn't want to do season 3. I did, very, very much so. And the show is very near and dear to my heart. And I'm thrilled that Jennifer has taken it over because I have huge respect for her. There are tax implications for any of us when we work abroad, which most people don't realize. And when I looked at the schedule, I couldn't figure out, I couldn't work out how I could be in Canada enough of the time to really give it due diligence, because I had already done 33 days of this past year, because we filmed into February. So with the same schedule, I'd had trouble staying under the 183 days the previous year. And so when I did the math and went, I've already used up 33 days this year. How can I be there for this show that I'm really passionate about, with my feet on the ground, available? And that I should qualify as no disrespect to the crew, because they're amazing. But even the last week, in December of the year before, when they were building all of Cersei's Island and all the extras in Cersei's Island, I had to do that last week remotely on the phone and on Zoom from LA. And my crew were unbelievable. Annie, my assistant designer, was sterling, but it's hard. It's hard to be in a fitting and say, okay, great, now move your phone to the shoulder.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and can you move that trim in 3 inches?
Oh.
And again, because the Sea of Monsters, so much of it was designed and so much of it was out of this world as we know it, barring the bathrobes, which was a necessary evil because we could only build, I think, 45 or whatever it was, costumes.
I like the bathrobes.
I did
we were
too.
on set. We were on set when we were there. They were filming all of that, and we were sitting at craft services with 100 extras all in bathrobes. That was delightful for us.
What about the Greeks? We
Yeah,
saw
the Greeks are beautiful too.
the Greek extras, she said defensively. But I realized, I mean, the gift that week gave me was, I realized just how hard it was on me, because I felt guilty that I wasn't there, just physically talking and touching and helping. And I really thought through whether that was fair on the crew and also on my actors. I got to be at the premiere here. Were you at the premiere here in LA? Did you get to come to that?
Yes.
Wasn't
I
that
think we maybe saw
amazing?
you from like the other side of the room, but it was such a, especially because they had those 2 rooms, we
was
missed like so
huge.
many people. Yeah.
It was huge. And it was fabulous. And it was lovely to see my actors there. But then it just happened that I was going back to England to see my family there. So I had the unbelievable treat of doing the premiere in London as well, which was just so cool because being English, I've never actually done a premiere of my own work in London before. So to see it on the buses and to see my actors again, it's family, you know, and to get hugs from all of them again and see them doing such an amazing job on the press tour. It was just,
Yes.
yeah, it was just heaven. So
they crushed that 19-day press tour.
I don't know how they did it. God bless them. I was exhausted just listening to it, and I only did a couple of pieces of it, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very bittersweet. I'm thrilled that it's Jennifer because I know she will do a beautiful job. But it's a bit like handing over your favorite child, and I was a bit like, oh. So
no, thank you for explaining that. And like I feel like it's so wonderful and important for our listeners and for people to hear like the business intricacies of what it takes to make a show like this. Like I'm an actor, and so this is my whole life, right? And like I am well aware of the tough times we are in all corners of the industry, both in theater and in TV film. But I think it's hard for people to understand really like what that means and what the financial intricacies are of things and what the union intricacies are of things and what it means to work internationally and all of those inhibitions that get put on, because it's not just, you know, we love Percy Jackson, let's have 50-minute episodes. Like that's not we cannot make these things magically happen. And so I think it's really helpful for people to hear like what that breakdown actually means and like how that meaningfully affects the creative process as well.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been what a gift, especially during these times. And given that I know everybody and I know the cast and I know the showrunners, what a gift would it have been to just go, terrific. I've got next year sorted. I know Vancouver. I've worked there a lot. I know the crew. I love my actors. I love my showrunners. They're incredibly supportive. 1, 2, 3, go. It would have been... And if there's any way I could have figured it out, I mean, I looked at, well, what happens if I drive down to Seattle every weekend? Because if you're out for 24 hours, that day doesn't count, but it has to be at least 24 hours.
Wow. Oh my.
Wow. Yeah, which again is not something most people think about.
Yeah.
So literally, and that's separate from your work permit. And people are like, but you have a work permit, Kate. Yes. But if I'm living physically in 2 countries equally, then it only makes sense that they consider me a resident. And if I'm a resident, I need to contribute to the tax base of that country.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
You're right. It's just one of those random things you have to think about.
Yeah, and for people, if any of our listeners are like, why do you film in Vancouver? Everything films in Canada because it's too expensive to film things in the United States. So now you see the conundrum of the situation. And even Vancouver itself is hurting now too. Like there's less going on, period. There's less here, there's less there. And we want, you know, the Vancouver Hollywood, the Vancouver wood to thrive as well. So that's just, you know, a little bit of a doom and gloom perspective on like the industry from me.
No, it's true. Yeah. I mean, the other side of that is that then I ended up in Albuquerque for 5.5 months. And there's a huge Netflix studio base there. I do think for all of us, there will continue to be beautiful work to design. There will continue to be beautiful work to watch. and stories to watch. And there will continue to be wonderful roles for actors and crafts people in front of the camera and behind the camera, because there's an international, worldwide audience who want it. It's just, and I think there will be more that comes back to the States. I do. It's just what that is and where that is. And as long as we go on having quality, like Percy Jackson, like Mysterious Benedict, it'll be okay. It'll just be different. I think it's that simple. Yeah, because people are going to. You were here at the premiere. Once I got to Paris, all the buses in Paris had Percy Jackson and the Olympians on the side of it.
Yes.
They hadn't changed it to a French version of Percy Jackson. It wasn't like SpongeBob SquarePants, which is Bob Sponge, literally translated.
No way.
Yes, it's Bob Sponge, because if in French you often flip the phrasing around.
That's demonic information I have learned. Wow.
So there was a few Bob Sponge, but almost all of Paris that my son picked up first. He was like, "Mom, Percy Jackson buses are everywhere." And of course, every time we saw one, we tried to take a photograph of it. Of course, it had gone, but and even when I was talking to Dan in London and to John, I said, and Craig, and I went, I knew it was special. And even they said, we had no idea it was going to do this. It's really, which is wonderful. Yeah. Because for any young person anywhere in the world, and if they can watch that and go, I can be something, I matter, I have value.
Yeah.
That's great. That's a good thing.
It's very special. It's just a special show. I'm going to take that, like, for any young person and flip that to one of the most important special characters in the show, Sally Jackson, and what it means for parents to see themselves represented in the show, and ask you a little bit about Sally's design. And we spoke with Jeannie a little bit. I asked her this, I had this tinfoil hat question I wanted to ask her about. I was like, I feel like Sally looks a little bit different at the end of this season than she does kind of in season one. And we know as readers of the books that this is the season that she starts dating Paul Blowfist. And there's a little nod in season 2 to the idea that she has started seeing Paul because she's driving his car. And Jeannie mentioned the Sally Jackson glow up and the post Gabe Sally Jackson glow up. And that this is a thing that was actually discussed, and she has a little bit more time to herself now and a little bit what it means to empower Sally Jackson through a curling iron. But yeah, I would love to hear about designing her as the universal parent figure of this show, and for people to be able to see themselves through her and her design.
I'm so glad Jeannie talked about that, because it was a bit of a tightrope.
Yeah.
Because for those of you who know the books and have read the books, but some people are going to come to the show and then go and read the books, right? And so she couldn't get too glam, which of course I was like, let's give her a cool, slightly bohemian blouse. And she was like, yes. And the showrunners were like, she's still making breakfast. I was like, she couldn't make breakfast because she could be going to her job afterwards. And they're like, Kate, she's still making breakfast. So
you can't look fabulous in a bohemian blouse while making breakfast, Dan.
That's what I said.
Dan Shops.
Come on, Dan. He's also not big on prints, and I do have a funny story about that if you have time.
Please.
Which would make him laugh. So if you watch when she goes to pick the kids up from the dock and she borrows her boyfriend's car, she's a little bit more done up. So that was the concession we made.
My gosh.
Was that that Jeannie did most of the work, if you like, of making that statement in the breakfast scene. And I dialed it back a bit, although she does have a nice tank on underneath the open shirt so that you see a little bit more of her. It's also a little more open. I mean, that scumbag she was living with was just so horrible. I mean, so glad he turned into a crumpled piece of stone. So, that was exactly. So that's how we I was like, okay, we can do the mom shirt, but let's do the tank underneath. And then when she goes to pick them up from the docks, one can totally believe that she's a little more done up because she came from work, or she has a reason to now. She has a reason to own a little bit more of herself. So I'm excited to see what Jennifer does with her in season 3.
Yeah, because she just continues to, her character just continues. I love that idea that she has this like open shirt because she is no longer having to hide and like protect herself so much.
Exactly. Yeah. And that was, thank you for catching that. Because that was exactly, that was my sort of nod to it. I also love that in the writing, even though we don't see her on camera, they've dotted in places where, especially in season 2, Tyson says, but mom, Sally says. And that there are times when Percy says, I remember my mom telling me that.
Yes.
He could just say, I know that, but he doesn't. So we are constantly reminded in very subtle ways all the way through season 2 of what an amazing job she has done as a single parent raising this young man of integrity and compassion. And if you think about it, once he found out he was a demigod and he could swim underwater without worrying about drowning, and he could move water around, he could have turned into sort of a cocky shit. But the fact that he didn't, if you think about it, is a huge testament to how he was raised and how his mother has nurtured him and brought him into this world.
Arguably the entire difference between Luke and Percy is Sally Jackson.
Yes. Yeah, and then I feel sad for Luke. And Charlie's such a lovely human being.
Please tell us about Luke's popped collars and Luke's new money / old money / frat boy / I'm golfing in Connecticut today. Like, it's so funny because we could spend like hours talking to you about like the incredible design of all of these like mythical creatures and the monsters and the giants. But so much of like what I feel like is so cool about talking to all the designers is like how you guys take character and the arc of where they're at in their character this season and put that into the clothes for like these like main main 6 outfits. So I know that I know that Charlie has talked about the fact that Luke has money and resources this season. And he is going to make sure that you know that based on what he's wearing and the boat and all of that. But the really like almost like aggressive collar popping and layering and like bright whites, I'm so interested in his color palette this season, in addition to the style of the clothing. Please share your thoughts on the evil of cable knit.
Gosh, when I first met with over Zoom with Dan and John and Craig and Zoe, I had done, I think you saw it in my office, I had done I'd done a whole presentation based on them sending me the outline, sending me the first couple of scripts. And I just loved the idea that, and I had watched season 1 a couple of times. So I knew each one of I felt that I knew a little bit about what each one of them were bringing to the character. And I think often, and so I knew Charlie's how he carried himself and that kind of thing. I just sort of loved the idea. I think often all of us use clothing as armor. We just do. And Luke, even in season 1, what Charlie brings to Luke is an air of arrogance and attitude, because that's all he's got.
Literally.
And I think very often that's how people hide. They hide behind, we all hide behind our defenses, all of us. It's just what they are. And so given his insecurities, given his need for respect, given his need for love, given his need for acknowledgement, all he has going for him is his good looks. And in season 1, even when he was in a camp t-shirt, he managed to make it look like his was better than anyone else's. Just by, if you think right, just by how he carried himself, just by how Charlie brought
the posture,
his posture. So when he came, I pitched that, and Dan was intrigued with it. They were all intrigued with it because it wasn't really a route they had thought about. And actually the tracksuit that we made, that was originally my idea for the genesis of it, which was based on actually a Versace tracksuit because it had the key pattern on it. That originally was my idea for his dad.
Yes, I was going to ask about that because in the book, his dad is the one wearing the tracksuit.
And I thought it would be hilarious if he was in a version of, if his dad was in that. And Dan was the one who went, what happens if we put Luke in that when we first see him? And I was like, okay. And that then made the sort of popped collars and the attitude work even more. And as soon as Charlie tried the clothes on, before I popped the collar for him, he looked at himself in the mirror and he changed his stance and he popped his collar and there was Luke. And he looked at himself at the different angles and we both laughed.
Yeah.
We both laughed. So from then on, it was like, okay, that's the road. That's it. That's the road we're going to go down. And then when he gets to the island, we went backwards and forwards about a light color or a dark color. And then we realized in that terrain, and because of, it was much more interesting if he stayed in the light colors.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's fun to see him in the light colors, knowing he's, our antagonist. Like, why not? Like let there be contrast there. Let us question the evil of a light color palette. Like,
well, yeah. And there is a history of costume designers making the choice. That's not why I did it, but if you do a little bit of digging, you'll find that there are some costume designers who really love to play with playing against the obvious, and that they will choose color for villains that is not what you expect, whether it's white or cream or a bright color or yeah.
Wow. This is completely non sequitur, but that just reminded me of did want to ask you, going back to the Clarice leather jacket. Like, I think that it's such an interesting kind of, like mommy and me thing with Aries, where it's like, look at Aries' iconic leather trench coat, and then I'm his daughter, and I have this cute cropped leather jacket as well. Was that intent? You're nodding that was a
Oh yeah. I mean, she needed something badass.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's something I specifically pitched. And then I looked at a bunch of different leather jackets and everybody was like, let's just buy a modern one. And I was like, no, it needs to be, again, slightly out of time.
Yeah.
So I looked at a 40s jacket and we looked at a 70s jacket. And then there's a leather company in Vancouver, and I had them do it, the mock-up first, and play with the proportions some more. And then we had it made in leather. A few of them. made in leather.
Sickening. I'm gonna
So
call
if anyone
that...
asks where it is, I do wonder if somebody's going to knock it off, because that quite often happens.
If somebody's going to knock it off, I totally wouldn't spend $50 to $200 on a knockoff Clarice season 2 leather jacket. If anybody wants to put that up on a cosplay website, take my money.
When I was in London, when I was at the premiere in London, I was blown away. There was a reception before the showing, and before the cast came out. And I was just milling around, and there were some really lovely posters. And there was a young woman. I never got her name, unfortunately. So if she listens to this, I hope she contacts you and you can contact me.
Yes, we'll send Kate your username.
Okay. So she wanted to get a better photograph of some of the posters that were lining the back of the wall. And so I moved out of the way, and I said, would you like me to take the picture? And my sweet partner, my sweet husband, was like, you know who she is? And I'm like, and he's like, and this young English guy, this young woman went, no. And he said, oh, she's a costume designer. She did all of this. And to begin with, the gal wasn't sure she believed him. And he said, no, really, this is the costume design. And so she was very sweet. And once she'd sort of realized that I was happy to talk to her, she opened up her phone. A friend of hers who's a cosplayer had already copied Annabeth's armor. And I zoomed in, and the detail, I want to know who that person was, because it was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Mm-hmm. I was completely blown away. I was like, oh my gosh.
That must be a really cool part of your job, is seeing everybody recreate what you do with with no resources, you know.
It's very humbling. I mean, I've as you know, the Costume Designers Guild has a booth at Comic-Con in San Diego every year. Mm-hmm. And I've gone down and helped over the years. It's incredibly humbling. It's incredibly humbling for all of us as costume designers, that this whole community of people spend weeks and months and years and come and visit. My friend LJ does a lot of the superhero costumes, and she goes down every year. And there are people who know her now who will find out when she's going to be at the booth and will just come and visit and show her what they've been doing the last year and what they've made, and ask her questions. And that is one of the greatest compliments and the biggest gifts that your community, your extended community, pay us as costume designers. Yeah. And I think it's important for them to know that. Yeah. Because you're really a bridge between us toiling away, doing crazy hours, going in at the weekends, waking up in the middle of the night, making notes, and the world who go, oh, that's nice. And you guys have an understanding and a comprehension and an appreciation that's certainly, I can speak for myself and for some of my colleagues, that's very special to us. It really is.
I think cosplayers are so amazing. And I just love how, for Carter and I do this podcast because that is our response to the overwhelming levels of love and fanhood that we experience when we watch this. But it's so interesting. I just love how in fandom, it's we're all the same, but it's also so diverse. Everybody, it's kind of like the Mysterious Benedict Society or Percy Jackson. Everybody uses their unique talents and skills to then translate that overwhelming feeling of love and obsession with something into the thing that they're good at. And so people who spend an entire year making Annabeth Chase armor are doing the same thing that Carter and I are doing on this podcast, which is just finding an outlet to channel their fanhood into, using their skills and the thing that they like doing. And some people make fan art and some people write fanfic, and we're all basically doing the same thing, just rounding out all of this other content and activity that we can do with all of this weird excess energy that we have, that we're like, what are we supposed to do with this frenetic love, but make something. And so it does feel in some way like it's nice to know that it's not just like a one-way thing. Like you make something and then everybody responds to it and they make something back. And that is like the beauty of fandom.
Yeah. I mean, I think the other thing about Percy is I love going into different worlds with each job I get, and I've been very fortunate in that. It's unusual to be able to do quite such a diverse palette on one show. I mean, to get to do sirens that look as though they're made out of rock and work with the art department and with the stunt department and with the props department and with the set dressing department and make fake starfish and sea urchins and all of those things. And then you're changing gears and you're doing a whole Art Nouveau spa, and then you're changing gears and you've got a bunch of people in platform boots running through the woods who are sort of rocker giants and who are woven leather and fur and fake bones because they're cannibals, but you don't want it to be too gross. And and then you're doing sailors of different time periods, and then you're doing crazy ladies who are blind driving a taxi, and then you're doing kids, and then you're doing a chariot race. I mean, the breadth of design and the breadth of different challenges that I had on season 2 is certainly the broadest, most diverse I've ever had the privilege of doing in my career.
Absolutely. And it has been so successful. It's been so sick. I just hope that I don't know how online you have been through this show airing, but I just hope you know that everyone is floored by how good this season looks and is taken aback by the design and all of the practical monsters and the goats. Like everyone has been taking such delight in that like incredible scope and diversity of styles and looks and designs. It's been like a big love fest online, truly.
Well, thank you. I hope you know that. Really. I actually, I mean, I've answered a few Instagram posts, but I haven't. I probably will. It's I don't know. I probably go down too many rabbit holes, I suppose.
Yeah. Okay, listen, we could talk to you for 18 hours, but we've taken up a lot of your time. So I feel like maybe I'll give Carter and we can ask like one question about like one look, and then maybe you can tell us about Dan Schatz and his fear of patterns. And then we can wrap up. For me, I'm very fascinated with Tyson's vest. This is the other iconic piece of outerwear to me this season that is so interesting. Like Tyson's little sleeveless vest. I want to hear about and it's also like this very long vest, and I wonder if that has to do with like proportions of like helping make him look like this big Cyclops, even though we don't need to make Daniel look big because he's already naturally big. But yeah, this bright kind of blue long sleeveless vest that goes over his gray top. Will you tell me about that design?
That was actually a really tough one because Daniel is tall. He's very handsome. He's really, really, really well built. He works out.
As a strong dude.
He is a strong dude. That's perfectly worded in the best possible way. And he's playing basically a baby Cyclops. He's playing a preteen Cyclops.
Yeah.
So as soon as you started to see his arms, as soon as you started to see his body as it really is, which you've both seen, so you know exactly what I'm talking about, it wasn't helping him be this adolescent. It wasn't helping us believe he was basically a baby Cyclops.
Yeah, it's almost like the opposite of the clothing journey for Charlie and Luke. Like instead of enhancing that posture, we need to unenhance that posture.
Yes. So anything that fit him properly didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
But it also, you didn't want it to look forced.
Mm-hmm.
So we tried a lot of different things. And also the idea that, so nothing quite fits. Everything's a little bit, even once he's at camp, everything's a little bit sort of hand me down. And so, yes, the blue vest was a sweatshirt that I cut up, and we deliberately made sure that it had just enough over the shoulder, but that it went down instead of this way. So it was the reverse psychology of anything we did with Charlie, completely. So with Charlie in the tracksuit, there's just a tiny, weeny bit of extra. I had the shoulders cut to really emphasize his shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
So everything we did on Charlie to emphasize his physique and his body, we did absolutely the reverse on my Tyson.
I knew there had to be a story behind that vest. Thank you for illuminating.
Yeah, and the sense that he could have found it anywhere, that somebody at camp. So if you remember in the books, there's also the piece where the camp T-shirt is too small for him. We tried a bunch of stuff, and as soon as you did that, he wasn't Tyson anymore. So that's why it's filmed the way it is, and you just see a tiny bit of the scarring, and he's wearing it over something else. That's why he's layered it over a T-shirt.
Yeah, we really remarked on that in the first couple episodes. That little baby T-shirt really does so much. It adds to for the Force perspective and everything.
Yes. Yeah. So it was that. Yeah, that's the. But I wanted to keep him in the blues and greens because of the
Poseidon.
Percy and the Poseidon connection.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, thank you, Carter. This is your one question to Cate. What will you do with your time?
I think you've talked about this a lot, but I think it is the thing that fascinated me the most, which is the specifically the movement of these siren costumes. Like, how is it possible to find this good balance of blending them in, as you've described, with the set, with the makeup and everything, but having this like really incredible articulation because of how they need to assume all these different positions as they're performing all the movement of the sirens.
Well, I wish you had been able to be there on the set on the day. I knew that they were going to be wired, and so they had to be harnessed so that they would be able to do all of that. So I had already talked to the stunt folk about all of that. And I was very, very lucky that I had Tanis, who headed. Tanis was my costume. She's a prop maker. She's a costume maker. She's what we call a specialty costume builder, which means that she knows how to do pattern cutting, but she also knows how to do sculpting. She also knows how to work in leather and foam. You may have met her. She's tall, Scottish, very, very statuesque, beautiful woman with long sort of hair to about here, rather quietly spoken. So I talked to the art department because I knew that the rocks couldn't be so high that they couldn't move. And then I came up with the idea that if, in talking with Tanis, I said, supposing it's based on a hoop skirt, and this is where my my theater training and having done the 1860s came in, because I knew that the only way women forgive me, but the only way women could go into the bathroom back then was because they had a hoop skirt, and you can literally lift it up, right?
Yes.
Because it accordions on itself.
Yes.
So from there we came up with hoop skirts and accordions. Okay.
For the movement.
So that they could go down or they could come up. But that meant that we had to talk to the art department about how the rocks were around them. And then how did we make the hoop skirts, which is literally what the bottom of them is based on, not look like circles. Because hopefully when you watch it or you go back and rewatch it, they don't. So we literally did it by degrees. So And then the top half then is basically a leotard that then is added onto. And then we knew that, as I think I talked to you when you came out to visit, we couldn't use any real shells. We couldn't use any real sea urchins. We couldn't use anything real because of Disney's very strict, which I respect. Even if they're long dead and I went to the seashore, I can't borrow any of that stuff. So we knew we had to sculpt all of that. That was a conversation I had with the art department. And literally, as they were carving the rocks, we would go downstairs to the mill, which you went to, with the hoops that we had started to build the rocks on top of. And then one of our crew would step inside them and we would see how she could move. Okay. Now, each of those plinths are different. So each of those skirts are different, and the rocks and how they can crumple are different. So then we had to work with the stunt coordinator to make sure that the movement did what the director and the showrunners wanted it to do, but that they still didn't look like circles. So each one of those skirts and each one of those tops is unique. Cut to the day before we actually filmed it. And it was a very tight timeline. We went out to the set. It's pouring with rain. It's an exterior set, by the way, FYI. And he had switched two of the stunt people. And they couldn't crumple all the way. And I called him in panic. And I was like, you can't do this. And he's like, why not? And I explained it to him. He unfortunately was on one of the other sets, and it was like, okay, then switch them back. So we switched them back.
Eli or Trevor?
This was Eli. Trevor was there, and he was like, Kate, and Eli was the one because you know how busy it is. So Eli was on the other set. I was like, Eli. And he was like, okay. And Trevor was like, I don't know. You've been dealing with Eli. So my two wonderful stunt women switched. And I thought poor Tanis I thought her head was going to explode because we had literally gone down almost every single day to make sure this worked. And then which of the rock pieces was stiff and which pieces were foam, and where it was fabric, and then where we had put all the lichen and where we had put the starfish. And yeah, anyway, I'm very proud of those pieces. And I'm very, very
incredible.
Very proud. My stunt women were extraordinary, and my crew and my breakdown crew. And then I think I have a picture somewhere of them all on the set helping me at the last minute, because then we watered things down and we put slime on them, and yeah.
Well, it's just, I mean, between the chariot races this season and the siren sequence, like never before seen, all department collaboration, like balls to the wall, incredible, successful sequences that television has never before seen and will never see again, going down in the history books and the halls of fame.
I hope so. I hope somebody shows up as a siren at Comic-Con in San Diego. If they can,
imagine. And they're like on wheels.
And they're on, or whatever. I just, if I can be there, I will be there. If you find out that somebody's going to be a siren for me.
Everyone tag Cate in your cosplays. Cate Adair on Instagram. Like tag her so she can see your amazing work. And if you would like to close us out, you can feel free to tell us about your anecdote if you would like to.
Oh my goodness! And I've taken far too much of your time, but know how
we're taking much of yours. Thank you for being here.
Please know how much I appreciate it, and having been privileged enough to be on a member of the Costume Designers Guild for a number of decades now, and being on the executive board, and my friend Ivy Thade, who coordinates Comic-Con through the Guild every year. I cannot begin to fully express how grateful we are to the fan base out there who really understand what we do, who ask the questions that they do, that come to the panels that we put on. Because also some of those people are the next generation of costume designers.
Absolutely.
Some of those people are the next generation of costume builders like Tanis. I could not have done what I did without Tanis. I knew in my head it was possible. And I knew that my assistant designer, who was LA-based, who funneled stuff to us, David Matwico, we've worked together now for 10 years. And he's very good at construction as well. I knew with his help, between the three of us, we could figure it out. But I also was more than aware that it was an uphill lift. More than aware that what I was asking in theory was possible, but that it would take the talent and the ingenuity and the patience and the dedication that it did. And I think that's really, I can't overemphasize that enough. Mm-hmm. Dan Schatz does not like prints.
Oh, Dan, I know you're listening to this right now. I know you're listening.
He's not completely allergic to them, but they're not his favorite thing. And in some cases, there's validity to that because they can timestamp something. I mean, if the three of us look at a print with bright floral sort of daisy pattern, we'll probably go, that's the 70s. So I understand where it comes from. But when I saw the early concept art and then I saw the later development and the set decoration that Hamish and his team were coming up with for Circe's, I knew it would work in a solid, but I just sort of loved the idea that it wasn't a solid. And I tend to, the early drafts of my illustrations, which again you've seen, I tend to work in shape and silhouette first, and then choose color and fabric. It's just the way I've always worked. So he knew the silhouette sketch of it, and that had been approved. And I did make sure that I had a backup fabric in my defense and the pattern. But when I came back to LA just before the holidays and just before Christmas and Hanukkah, I went to the fabric stores and I found that fabric. And I fell in love with it. And there's also some strange, I'll have to look into it more, there's also some strange thing about paisleys and spies. Which...
Ooh.
Yes.
Is this ringing a bell for anybody?
I think visually I have an intuition for what you're describing, yes.
And the colors were so good. So I had it made down here, and I maybe sort of forgot in my defense because the last fitting was literally just a few hours before I flew back to Canada. So I picked it, they finished it, I put it in my suitcase, flew back to Canada. So I hadn't really had time to photograph it properly. And I knew that she was going to wear a wig and the makeup. So I sort of said, well, we should do a full test. And everybody agreed we should do a full test. And I warned Jen in the workroom that I had the pattern and I had a backup fabric and that she might have to make a whole new costume. And she was like, okay. So I wasn't sneaky. I was just careful. So Jeannie did the wig beautifully, and Naomi did the hair and makeup. And they wanted to check her one last time. And I was like, no, let's just get her onto the set in costume. So when Dan saw her for the very first time, she was on the set in that office in the costume. And he kind of looked at me and he gave me that lovely smile of his. And he knows how much I adore him. And he went, uh-huh. I said, and he said,
isn't it pretty?
And he said, and Cece loved it. I mean, my actress loved it. And she got up and she moved around and she did a turn. And he went, I get it. You're right. Okay. And I said, I do have a solid fabric in the background. And if you want it changed, you can have it changed.
Sometimes it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission.
It's not something I would recommend very often. And it's something I've done, I can count less than, on one hand in my life, in my career. But it
was worth it to birth the pantsuit.
I think it was. It was. Oh. So anyway.
That is so beautiful. Thank you, Dan, for approving the Paisley jumpsuit. Wherever you are listening to this now, we appreciate it. We love the Paisley jumpsuit. It was definitely the right call.
I mean, that piece where she comes down the stairs, that's gorgeous spiral staircase. And it's just like, and it's moving. And you're like, yeah, she moves beautifully. She's just, she's a rock star.
And the camera moves beautifully too. Was it all that shot with the spiraling down the spiral staircase? Oh, incredible. It came together beautifully. Well, Cate, thank you so much for joining us today and taking so much of your time to tell us about all the amazing, intricate work you've done. We literally could talk to you for like 10 hours straight because of all of the breadth and depth of work that you did this season. But we really, really appreciate your time. And again, you guys can follow Cate at Cate.Adair on Instagram if you would like to, and see some of the amazing concept art and some other incredible behind the scenes work from season 2. And we just appreciate you so much. Thank you for spending so much of your time with us today.
It was lovely meeting both of you. I hope our paths cross again. And thank you so much for all you do. Really.
Thank you. All right, we'll see y'all listeners next week for some more awesome season 2 behind the scenes interviews. Bye, y'all.